The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for August 10th. Your readers today are David Hayes and
Tom Scanlon.
The first article is from the A section, the news section, and it is titled Putting a Question Mark on Status of Birthright Citizenships. The article is submitted by Michael Loria from the USA Today. New orders from the Trump administration prohibiting birth tourism at best do little to stop a small and already unlawful practice, and at worst illegally put a question mark on citizenship, immigration and legal experts say. President Donald Trump signed a pair of executive orders on Thursday, August 6th, aimed at stopping foreigners from coming to the United States to give birth in the country, a practice known as birth tourism, already prohibited by federal code. Critics say such visitors are abusing birthright citizenship, the nation's standard enshrined in the 14th Amendment that people born on American soil are U.S. citizens. The Supreme Court upheld the standard in June. According to scholars and immigration experts, it is unclear how Trump's orders will stop what a statistically small issue in the first place. Birth tourism accounts for less than 1% of all annual births in the United States, according to the largest estimate of the practice. My initial impression is that most of it is unconstitutional or in violation of federal statute, said Amanda Frost, a University of Virginia Law School professor and author of a book on birthright citizenship. Provisions clearly violate what the 14th Amendment has already meant and what the Supreme Court just upheld. At worst, critics envisioned a situation that will harm mothers needing to travel to the United States for medical care and be used as part of the administration's effort to denaturalize some American citizens. It's about putting a question mark next to the citizenship, which is very dangerous, David Leopold, an immigration attorney, told USA Today. The Trump administration's pair of executive orders follow the White House's recent attempt at curbing birthright citizenship, which has been the law of the land since the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868. The administration tried to get rid of birthright citizenship in a case that went before the Supreme Court, but the nation's top justices ruled 6-3 against the White House. I thought we were going to win at the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, we had a bad decision, a very unfair decision. Our country suffers because of it, Trump said in the Oval Office after signing the new executive orders, so we're ending it a different way. Birth tourism is a massive problem in the eyes of the White House. In signing the executive order, Trump said hundreds of thousands of babies are born to birth tourists in the United States annually. Studies of the issue, however, have found the practice is statistically insignificant. According to the Migration Policy Institute, the high end of estimates say that around 26,000 such babies are born every year. More conservative estimates place the number around 10,000. Either figure constitutes less than 1% of the more than 3.5 million babies born in the country every year. The scale of the problem is rather small, said Colleen Cavanaugh, a Migration Policy Institute analyst who co-authored a recent study of the issue, though it does present policy issues including visa fraud and tax evasion. Birth tourism, legal experts know, is already barred by federal regulations prohibiting people from lying on visa forms and from coming to the country to have a child. People who have studied the topic said White House descriptions of birth tourists were misleading. Stephen Miller, a top Trump advisor seen as the architect of the president's immigration policy, described the practice as an abuse aimed at taking advantage of the U.S. welfare system. However, experts point out that it is usually wealthy people who engage in the practice. Trump himself acknowledged as much when signing the orders, telling reporters that the people behind birth tourism are multimillionaires and billionaires. Likely because of the fees associated with being able to pay a birth tourism company, that creates an elite group of people, Kavanaugh said. The intent for most mothers was the idea of providing U.S. citizenship as the gold standard of what they could provide for their child for the future. According to the Migration Policy Institute, fees for such services reportedly range from $20,000 to $100,000. Among people who participated were Chinese mothers looking to have a second child during the era of the country's one-child policy. Others are wealthy people coming from countries where the government is regarded as less stable. Some such births are facilitated by illegal birth tourism companies. In 2019, the federal government prosecuted a Chinese man for operating a company in California called You Win USA Vacation Services that facilitated the births of some 500 children. The company charged customers between $40,000 and $80,000 in order to set up an apartment in Irvine, California, leading up to the birth of the child, according to the Department of Homeland Security. But experts note that children are not responsible for their parents' crimes, and birthright citizenship is well established in the text of the 14th Amendment and was again upheld by the Supreme Court. The High Court struck down on June 30th an earlier Trump executive order aimed at limiting birthright citizenship. The justices said the president cannot change the definition of birthright citizenship with the stroke of a pen, and that's Trump's push threatened to upend how the Constitution guarantee had historically been understood. Birthright citizenship, scholars say, is a bedrock American principle. Born in the USA is a phrase that carries power, said Frost, the University of Virginia scholar. This goes to the heart of what it means to be an American. We're a country founded on the idea that we reject hereditary status, titles of nobility. We reject any kind of lineage-backed definition of citizenship. To be an American is to be here. Some critics said that whether the new executive orders are illegal or redundant is beside the point when the intent is to call into question the citizenship status of some Americans. This is about putting a question mark next to somebody's citizenship, whether the parent was in the country without authorization or whether the mother came here as a visitor, said Leopold, the immigration attorney. And finally, Leopold noted the administration has already made attempts to strip citizenship from Americans. Among such efforts, a June 2025 Department of Justice memo instructed government lawyers to attempt to revoke a person's United States citizenship from people who became citizens, quote, illegally, end quote. He added, it's one more part of their all-out assault on immigration, on the people who have naturalized, and groups of Americans they don't believe should be in this country.
Our next article is titled Crisis Worsens as Lake Mead Shrinks. Source of drinking water for 25 million hits record low. The authors are Janine Santucci, Diana Voiles-Pulver, and Trevor Hughes. The United States' largest reservoir, Lake Mead, has reached its lowest level on record as the drought-stricken West faces a growing water crisis. The giant reservoir, created by the Hoover Dam on the Colorado River outside Las Vegas, dropped to a record low elevation August 7th, reaching 1,040.5 feet. The lake provides water for tens of millions of American homes, businesses, and farms, along with carbon-free hydroelectricity. The lake level has fallen every day since July 31st, according to data from the Bureau of Reclamation. Elevation levels in the lake have been tracked since officials first began filling the reservoir in the 1930s. The lake hit its previous modern record low level, 1,040.58 feet, on July 28, 2022, before several wetter winters helped refill it. It's grim, and we obviously need to do something, and fast, said Braid Udall, a senior climate scientist at Colorado State University. The last time Lake Mead was near this low in 1922, Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat from Arizona, warned of drastic consequences for Arizona and other Colorado Basin states. If levels at key reservoirs drop further, consequences could include the loss of hydropower generation, even dead pool conditions, which no water would flow out of Lake Mead. 2022 low water levels in Lake Mead revealed sunken boats, the remains of towns that were submerged to make the reservoir, and several bodies. Lake Mead is the source of drinking water for about 25 million people, of a total of about 40 million served by the Colorado River Basin, including Metro Las Vegas. The river also supplies irrigation water for 5 million acres of cultural land, including California farms, providing a significant portion of the nation's fruit and vegetables. Climatologists and other water supply experts say a long-term drought is being exacerbated by climate change, which is altering how much water falls on the Rocky Mountains as snow before melting into the Colorado River. The river serves 7 western states, Native American tribes, and 2 northern Mexican states, with water for agriculture, irrigation, and drinking, hydroelectricity, recreation, and fish and wildlife habitat. Waters enter the 1,400-mile-long Colorado River as rain, snowmelt, and runoff from the Rocky Mountains, and flows through the Grand Canyon down to Lake Powell, nation's second-largest reservoir, which is held back by the Glen Canyon Dam. The water flow powers Glen Canyon Dam's hydroelectric turbines, then flows downstream to end up in Lake Mead, where it's distributed to lower basin states after again generating electricity. Because the river and its reservoirs are insufficient to meet water demand, farmers in cities have been pumping groundwater from aquifers, which have been losing water at an increasing rate, according to NASA. Since 2002, the reservoirs and the aquifers have lost a combination of 13.7 trillion gallons of water, according to recent NASA estimates. The record low recorded Lake Mead comes days after federal authorities released a plan to deal with water shortages, which include cuts to the amount of water that can be drawn by states in the Colorado River's lower basin, including Arizona, California, and Nevada. Officials in the 7 western states have been battling over the river for more than a century, particularly as the West's increasing population has demanded more water at a time of persistent drought. The federal government issued a 10-year management plan and environmental impact statement to address water shortages in the Colorado River and plans to release additional details in the coming days. That plan calls for significant water use cuts by California, Arizona, and Nevada, and voluntary reductions by Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Utah. Arizona officials were alarmed at the cuts federal officials are calling for in the 3 states in the river's lower basin, the Arizona Republic reported. The state's Water Resources Director, Tom Buchatsky, has said his team continues to negotiate with other 6 states and federal decision makers. Because of the extended drought, the combined water volume of Lake Mead and Lake Powell hasn't been this low since before Lake Powell began to fill in 1963, according to the Department of Interior. The Department's letter introducing environmental impact document states that the risk to the system has never been greater. Lake Powell is now at 3,521 feet and has fallen almost 4 feet in the past 30 days. Federal officials say it probably will hit its lowest level ever by early spring, if not sooner. Udall said the new federal plan is a solid start to addressing the issue, and he and others have been warning for decades. But he worries too many people across the West believe the forecast Super El Nino will bring significant relief to the area. The long-term trends, he said, remain dire even if this winter's a wet one. He said Lake Mead's future is frightening unless states, Native American tribes, and the Mexican government can agree to use significantly less water. Mostly, I'm sad that we haven't done more with all the knowledge we had, Udall said. We're asking people to do really hard things, but failure to do them has completely unacceptable consequences. We're living on the edge. Water use in Las Vegas area have cut demand dramatically over the past 20 years, reducing per capita use by 58%, even as the population grew by 876,000 people. In 2022, the Southern Nevada Water Authority completed work on a project to ensure it could still pump drinking water from Lake Mead to serve the Las Vegas area when water levels are low. Launched in 2008, the effort includes both a new low-level water intake closer to the lake's bottom and a pumping station to lift that water back up 500 feet. The Water District has been paying residents to rip out their thirsty grass and replace it with landscaping or trees. Has banned most new commercial fountains and water features and limited the amount of water golf courses may use. More than 250 million square feet, equivalent of 9 square miles, has been removed. And lastly, authorities have helped residents buy an estimated 45,000 removable swimming pool covers, saving at least 5.6 billion gallons from evaporating in the desert heat.
You are listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Neighbor Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 17 minutes after the hour. The next article is the cover story from page 1 of the A section. It is titled, Caught Between Science and Politics. Fauci went from trusted expert to COVID scapegoat. The author is Michael Collins from the USA Today. Byline is Washington, D.C. From a window on the 7th floor, Dr. Anthony Fauci recognized one of the hundreds of protesters swarming the lawn of the NIH. They had blocked entrances and pathways at the campus in Bethesda, Maryland. They set off colorful smoke bombs and blasted air horns every 12 seconds as a reminder that, statistically, someone had just died of AIDS. They carried fake coffins with Fauci's name on them. They focused their anger on him, the nation's top infectious disease doctor, for what they felt was the government's lackluster response to a disease that was, at that point, killing mostly gay and bisexual men and intravenous drug users. Fauci watched the man he recognized climb onto the concrete patio of the main building. Police wrestled him down, and Fauci, dressed in his white lab coat, bolted downstairs. I did it, was the first one arrested. I was the first one arrested, the man, Peter Staley, replied. Fauci knew Staley, who was HIV positive, as one of the leaders of the protest. Publicly, Fauci had argued with him. Staley and other activists over the government's response to AIDS. Privately, Fauci had met them over dinner and wine, strategizing for hours over how to get experimental drugs quickly to AIDS patients who had no other hope. Fauci wanted to make sure Staley wasn't hurt. The baffled police officer stood by in disbelief as Staley grinned and assured Fauci he was okay. It was an extraordinary moment, recalled Staley, who remains close friends with Fauci almost 40 years later. For Fauci, it would be one of many personal moments in a 56-year career that would see him become the nation's most revered and in some cases reviled scientist and infectious disease expert. He served 7 presidents, from Ronald Reagan to Joe Biden. He advised leaders through anthrax attacks, Ebola outbreaks, and the SARS scares in Asia. He devised the U.S. Global Attack Plan against AIDS. As director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, part of the National Institutes of Health, Fauci led the fight against diseases that threaten the lives of Americans and people all over the world. He became an icon because of his success, said Dr. Gene Marazzo, who succeeded him as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases after he retired in 2022. But would be the COVID-19 pandemic under President Donald Trump that would turn the 85-year-old white-haired doctor with a gruff Brooklyn accent into a lightning rod like never before. Fauci's job often placed him between politics and science. George W. Bush gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his work on HIV and AIDS. Biden gave him a presidential pardon after congressional Republicans threatened him with criminal charges over his handling of COVID-19. Fauci and his family received so many death threats that he has his own security detail, which he pays for himself, after Trump revoked his taxpayer-funded protection. On August 6th, a GOP-led Senate panel voted 8-5 to hold him in contempt of Congress. A week early, he had sat stoically for 3 hours and refused to answer questions about his leadership during the pandemic. The committee chairman, Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, and other GOP lawmakers accused him of misleading the public about the virus's origin. They blamed him for the closure of schools and businesses during the worst days of the pandemic. They claimed the NIH-funded research that a lab in Wuhan, China, used to create the COVID virus. Digging through the diary Fauci kept on his government computer, they accused him of saying one thing publicly and another privately about the origins of the virus. They painted him as someone obsessed with celebrities and his own fame. They battered him with serious questions about pandemic-era policies, vaccines, and masking guidelines, and not-so-serious questions about the day of the week and the color of the carpet in the room. More than 100 times, Fauci's response was the same. He invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Fauci's attorney, David Schertler, declined USA Today's request for an interview with Fauci. Schertler said in a statement that Paul is waging a baseless campaign to put Fauci in jail and harbors a seemingly pathological obsession with him. The broad, preemptive pardon Fauci received from Biden covered only the period from 2014 to the end of Biden's term in January 2025. His attorneys feared Paul was trying to coach Fauci to say something under oath that could be misconstrued and used to prosecute him. Fauci's defenders say he has been unfairly made a villain by the MAGA Republicans, putting politics ahead of science, and by those still angry over forced school shutdowns and government-ordered lockdowns during the pandemic. For Fauci, they say the focus has always been the science. I never saw him say one thing privately and another publicly, said Jerome Adams, who was Surgeon General during Trump's first term and worked with Fauci almost daily during the pandemic as a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Like many scientists working in government, Fauci understood there is often tension between science, policy, and the practical realities of communicating with the public during a health crisis, Adams said. Those are difficult judgments, and reasonable people can disagree about them, Adams said. But I always felt he was guided by what he believed was in the best interest of the health of the American people, not by politics or personal gain. Fauci credits his parents with instilling the values that led him to a career in medicine and public health. Born into an Italian-American family, Fauci grew up in a 3-bedroom apartment above his father's pharmacy at 13th Avenue and 83rd Street in Brooklyn. In his 2024 memoir, On Call, A Doctor's Journey in Public Service, he described his family as loving and close-knit. His father, Stephen Anthony Fauci, whom he remembered as a shy man with a strong sense of ethics, integrity, and kindness, ran the pharmacy from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. 6 days a week. He took a 45-minute break in the evening to have dinner with his family. On Sunday, when the pharmacy was open half a day, Fauci worked the counter, ringing up prescriptions. He delivered them on his Schwinn bicycle on weekends and during school breaks and in the summer. In between, he was the starting point guard on the basketball team at Regis High School, an all-boy Jesuit school. Fauci remembered his father accommodating customers who could not afford their medication. When he asked why, his father replied, "They can't afford it. They're struggling. We will just put it on a tab," Fauci wrote in his memoir. Some bills were never paid. Our father taught us early in life, Fauci recalled, that because we were fortunate, it was our responsibility to help people when we could. He went to Cornell University Medical College, graduated first in his class in 1966, and accepted a fellowship at the National Institutes of Health in 1968, studying how the human body protects itself against infectious diseases and cancers. Except for 1 year at New York Hospital, Fauci would remain at the NIH for the rest of his career in public health. Fauci was puzzled by what he was reading. He had picked up the government's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly report from a pile of junk mail on his desk at the National Institutes of Health. An article detailed an unusual form of pneumonia in 5 men who otherwise had been healthy. It was dated 5 June 1981. AIDS had arrived in America. Over the next decade, AIDS would become a global crisis and the focus of Fauci's professional life as he led the government's response. The virus would kill more than 700,000 Americans. Fauci saw patients in the early days of the epidemic when no treatments were available. He testified before Congress and pressed Reagan's administration to dedicate billions of dollars to AIDS research. Fauci built a research program that tried to learn how to stop HIV from destroying the immune system. At the time, AIDS was often a death sentence. Because Fauci was seen as the federal government's AIDS czar, he became the target for activists who felt the administration wasn't moving fast enough. The writer Larry Kramer branded him a murderer in an open letter published in 1988. 2 years later, in May 1990, hundreds of protesters stormed the offices of the NIH. They demanded the government allow dying patients access to potentially life-saving drugs that hadn't yet been approved by the government. "We realized that our only salvation was going to come from science," said Staley, who left his Wall Street job to become a political activist with the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, or ACT UP. Fauci sympathized with his critics and did something other government officials had been unwilling to do, Staley said. He heard their concerns. He invited them to meetings in his office and later to long dinners over bottles of wine at restaurants and in the home of his top aide. The discussions got heated. Fauci really listened, agreeing at times and pushing back strongly when he didn't. The meetings gave him insight he couldn't get anywhere else. He responded by appointing people with HIV to committees overseeing AIDS research. He pressed the Food and Drug Administration to allow thousands of people into experimental drug trials. Gradually, many of the critics became close friends. "I am brutally honest with the guy," Staley said. "The stuff I have told him over the years, 9 out of 10 people would end the friendship, but he wanted to hear that. He wanted that feedback." By early 2020, COVID was spreading rapidly across the United States. Trump announced at a White House news briefing in March 2020 that the anti-malarial drug hydroxychloroquine could be a game changer in COVID treatment, claiming early test results had been promising. The next day, at a briefing in the same room, reporters asked Fauci, with Trump at his side, if that was true. Hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, he responded, adding the evidence cited by those touting the drug was anecdotal and not backed by science. At the same briefing, Trump referred to the State Department as the Deep State Department, and Fauci covered his face with the palm of his hand to hide his reaction. A photo of that moment went viral and quickly became an internet meme, and Fauci noticed everything for him started to change. He had been a trusted authority for Americans. He gave updates on television and answered reporters' tough questions and served as the voice of the latest science on stopping the spread of the coronavirus. But after he publicly contradicted Trump, Fauci sensed a change in how some people perceived him. While millions of Americans appreciated or admired me, a hardcore group saw me as a naysaying bureaucrat who deliberately, even maliciously, was undermining President Trump, he wrote. They loved and supported the president and regarded me as the enemy. To them, my hand to my forehead moment proved it. He and his family were bombarded with angry emails, texts, and phone calls. They received death threats. In Congress, Republicans aimed at Fauci more frequently and pushed the unproven theory that the coronavirus was created at a lab in Wuhan instead of spreading from animal to animal, as Fauci believed. At a contentious Senate hearing in July 2021, Senator Paul repeatedly clashed with Fauci and accused him of lying about the government funding research in Wuhan. If anybody is lying here, Senator, Fauci shot back, it's you. The bitter exchange set the stage for Senator Paul's Senate hearing last week. Many of Fauci's allies in the scientific community rallied to his defense. Fauci got some things wrong as he and other scientists tried to contain a virus they knew nothing about, said Dr. Paul Offit, director of the Vaccine Education Center and an attending physician in the Division of Infectious Diseases at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. But I think he was the right man for the job, said Offit, who had raised doubts about the reliability of early data on the effectiveness of the COVID vaccine and questioned some public health recommendations on booster shots. I think he really did try and explain things clearly. I think he's a voice of reason. Far from suggesting that Fauci was duplicitous, saying one thing about the virus's origin in private and something else in public, his diary instead shows him shifting his opinion as one new information became available, his defenders argue. It's perfectly reasonable to change the way you think about a complex topic, such as an emerging virus, if you receive new insights that justify doing so, said John Moore, a professor of microbiology and immunology at Cornell. Indeed, it would be for professional malpractice to not do so. People who have spoken to Fauci say he is in good spirits and is holding up despite the stress he is under. He is fully ready to finish this fight, Staley said. I think I might crumble if this were happening to me. He hasn't. If anything, Staley said, Fauci has gone back to the thing he loves most, being a doctor. And finally, 2 days after he pleaded the Fifth, Fauci was back at Georgetown University Medical Center, where he has worked since retiring 4 years ago. There, away from the chaos and the cameras, he quietly made his rounds and tended to patients.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:34, which means we turn to the money section of USA Today. And our first article is titled, U.S. Economy Loses 23,000 Jobs in July, report says. Latest numbers show labor market weakens. The author is Rachel Barber. U.S. employers shed 23,000 jobs in July, a figure far below an analyst's expectations. and downward revisions to job growth numbers for May and June reflect a weaker labor market that had been estimated. The July job losses reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics on August 7th come after hiring slowed in June following an earlier rebound from historically weak job creation in 2025. The July estimate comes in below the department's now revised estimated gains of 20,000 jobs in June and 63,000 in May. The unemployment rate ticked down 4.1% in July. After 3 months of holding steady at 4.3%, it dropped to 4.2% in June, though some experts attribute that dip to a decline in the number of people looking for work rather than a significant rise in those getting hired. The labor force participation rate fell to 61.4% in July, lowest reading since February 2021, and slightly down from 61.5% in June. With job opportunities remaining scarce, more workers are exiting the labor market entirely. ZipRecruiter labor economist Nicole Bow said in a note to USA Today. Average hourly earnings for employees on private non-farm payrolls rose by 2 cents to $37.62 in July. The Labor Statistics Bureau said over the past 12 months they have increased 3.2%, falling short of the 3.5% year-over-year increase in consumer prices recorded in June. The Bureau's Consumer Price Index report due August 12th will reveal whether employees' paychecks keep up with inflation in July. July marked the first time since February of this year the U.S. economy shed jobs. July also marked the first time in 2026 the unemployment rate fell to 4.1%. So, which sectors are losing jobs? Which sectors are hiring? Healthcare, typically a reliable engine of job growth, was the only interesting industry to post notable gains in July, hitting 22,000 roles. Though that figure still represents growth, it's lower than the sector's average monthly gain of 36,000 over the past year. Outside of healthcare, hiring has very little momentum, said Corey Tanger, LinkedIn head of economics for the Americas. There's not a labor market that's re-accelerating, despite speculation to the contrary earlier this year. Employment in local government education fell by 50,000 in July after showing little net change over the past year. The Labor Statistics Bureau said retail trade shed 19,000 jobs, and the financial activity sector lost 14,000. Employment was little changed from June to July in other industries, including social assistance, construction, manufacturing, professional and business services, and leisure and hospitality. Though the Bureau's job report is generally considered the gold standard for labor market data, ADP's National Employment Report, released August 5th, also offers a look into private sector hiring trends. It tells a different story, suggesting private U.S. employers added 44,000 jobs in July, driven by 36,000 roles added in the education and health service sector. The ADP report found hiring increases in several other industries, including financial activities, professional and business services, information, construction, and manufacturing. Found hiring decline in leisure and hospitality, trade, transportation and utilities, and natural resources and mining. The low hire, low fire dynamic economists had defined the U.S. labor market in 2025 may be back if it ever went away. Labor Department data released August 4th showed the quits rate, number of layoffs and job openings were little changed in June from the month before. Such a dynamic has led to a competitive market for job seekers. LinkedIn data revealed that the number of applications per job seeker on the platform rose in July, suggesting many are still finding it difficult to land work. It's not just the new grads that are hitting the market. That happens every year. Cantanega said, "We haven't seen as many jobs available for each person looking. That's been declining since a peak in 2022. It's been relatively steady over the past year, but it hasn't increased either." Meanwhile, employed workers still fear layoffs and feel downbeat. Glassdoor's Employee Confidence Index, which offers a glimpse at where employees feel their company is headed, fell to a record low in July. Percentage of employees who reported a positive 6-month business outlook sunk to 43.5%. Daniel Zao, Glassdoor's chief economist, said that while the survey questions specifically ask about business outlooks, he knows employees consider several factors when answering. In a sluggish labor market, he said, even employed workers can worry about their ability to land their next gig, promotion, or raise. Clearly, employees don't feel like the current job market is working for them, Zao said, adding just because someone's already employed doesn't mean they're getting career opportunities that they want. The U.S.-based employers announced 33,429 job cuts in July, down 27% from June and the lowest monthly total in 2 years. A Challenger Gray and Christmas report revealed on August 6th found announced layoff plans are down 41% this year compared with the first 7 months of 2025. For the 5th straight month, artificial intelligence led all reasons companies cited for job cuts. Most were seen in technology and transportation sectors in July. On the other hand, employers announced plans to hire 16,000 people in July, up from 47% from June, and the highest total since 2022, report said. So far this year, hiring plans are up 25% compared with the same period last year. Employers are hiring more than they were at this point last year, which bucks the trend we've seen since 2020. L&D Challenger, the firm's workplace expert and chief revenue officer, said in a statement released alongside the report, demand is showing up in aerospace, energy, and manufacturing, work that happens on a floor rather than a screen. This report is one of many Federal Reserve policymakers will review ahead of their next rate decision in September. By then, policymakers will have the August jobs report to look back on, as well as inflation data for July and August. In terms of job, we tentatively suggest a rebound as possible for August, but the Fed's decision is more likely to come down to what happens on inflation. James Knightley, chief international economist at Deutsche Bank, said in a note to US Today, the Fed typically raises benchmark for interest rates to help tame inflation and lowers it when it's concerned about slowing the labor market. The worst combination for Feds is inflation remains sticky while the labor market weakens, Diane Swank, KPMG economics chief economist, said in a separate note after the July jobs report release. Fed watchers have found the September decision difficult to predict after Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh suggested markets were doing some of the Fed's inflation fighting work for it. And lastly, before the July jobs report release, traders were nearly evenly split on the Fed's next move, with about half betting on a quarter-point hike, half predicting policymakers would continue to hold the federal funds at a rate of around about 3.5 to 3.75%. After its release, more are anticipating a pause, according to CME Fed Watch.
You are listening to a reading of today's USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 44 minutes past the hour. The next article is also from the money section. It is titled $11 billion in student loan debt is set to be canceled. The article is submitted by Mike Snyder with the USA Today. More than 170,000 borrowers will have their student loan debt erased as part of a years-long class action battle over about $23 billion in canceled loans. In the case filed in 2019, several students applied to the Department of Education for federal student loan relief under the Bauer defense rule because predatory for-profit schools misled them or defrauded them. Even though the Biden administration reached a settlement in 2022, the Trump administration continued to delay giving the borrowers relief, according to the Project on Predatory Student Lending, which brought the case on behalf of the plaintiffs. The Education Department's latest attempt to postpone the settlement schedule of relief for borrowers for 18 months was rejected on 17 July by a federal appeals court. That means about $11 billion in loans are set to be forgiven for more than 170,000 borrowers who did not receive timely decisions on their borrower defense applications. Eileen Connor, president and executive director of the Project on Predatory Student Lending, told the USA Today. Overall, the case, originally titled Sweet versus DeVos and the Department of Education, will lead to at least $23 billion in federal student loan relief for about 500,000 people, Connor said. In terms of monetary relief provided, Sweet is the largest class action settlement in American history and the largest settlement ever reached against the federal government, she said. It is also among the largest settlements of any kind in the U.S. The recent court decision made clear that the federal government cannot simply disregard borrowers' rights and its own legal obligations without consequence, Connor said. 9 original plaintiffs, including Teresa Sweet, a California woman who attended Brooks Institute of Photography, sued the Education Department, then headed by Betsy DeVos, alleging that the department had failed to cancel federal student loan debts that met borrower relief status. In the original 2019 court filing, the borrowers said that the schools actually delivered worthless products that left students with thousands of dollars in debt, damaged credit, and depleted access to further student aid. The Education Department in 2017 began to ignore the growing pile of borrower defenses, reduced its capacity to decide borrower defenses, and diverted its increasingly limited resources to undo all of the prior administration's works. The borrowers argued in the case. While waiting for loan forgiveness to be paid out, many were unable to get employment they hoped they would be eligible for, and many couldn't qualify for loans to buy homes or cars, according to the case. One student told the court her loan total had risen from about $250,000 to more than $400,000 while waiting for her borrower's defense application, accepted in June 22, to be resolved. This case was always about borrowers coming together to stand up for what was right, said Sweet in a July 23rd news release. Through the ups and downs of the last 7 years, we became a community united by the belief that what happened to us was wrong, and it became clear just how many people had been harmed by the same broken system. The 2022 settlement reached by the Biden administration has already led to $6 billion in federal student loan debt relief for 300,000 students. But the student loan case, which has continued across both Trump administrations, has impacted as many as 500,000 borrowers because a backlog of more than 210,000 grew during the court battle. The court's decision to uphold the settlement's deadlines is an extraordinary consumer protection victory, Connor said. It forced the federal government to act on roughly 500,000 long-neglected claims and entitled the overwhelming majority of those borrowers to full settlement relief, including cancellation of the debt they never should have owed, corrected credit reports, and, where applicable, refunds of payments they had already made. It also made clear that the federal government cannot simply disregard borrowers' rights and its own legal obligations without consequence. New applications for borrower relief are not eligible for this settlement. This decision should lead to loan relief for about 170,000 people who filed borrower defense applications in 2022. The Education Department's final deadline to clear borrowers' loan debt is June 15, 2027. Borrowers are not required to make payments as they wait for loan forgiveness to kick in. The average federal student loan balance forgiven under the settlement was more than $48,000, Connor told CNBC. Individual amounts vary significantly, however, and many borrowers receive substantially more or less, she said. For more details about the settlement and the relief process, go to the Project on Predatory Student Loans website. And finally, members of the original class of plaintiffs have been waiting for relief for as much as a year and a half, and has sent the PPL has sent the Education and Justice Departments a formal notice of material breach of the settlement.
Our next article is titled Staying Afloat. Social Security can't be a retirement plan, and here's why. The author is Danielle DeVisi. Nearly half of older American workers expect to rely mainly on Social Security for income retirement, according to a new report. To many in the retirement industry, that's a worrisome statistic. Social Security is not meant to be your only source of income in retirement, the Federal Social Security Administration cautions on its website. On average, the retirement trust fund replaced only about 40% of the money earned in working years. Retirement experts urge Americans to fund their retirement through multiple sources. Social Security, yes, but also retirement savings, investments, other income sources, perhaps a workplace pension. We would not recommend that anybody rely completely on Social Security for their retirement income, said Jessica Johnson, Senior Strategist for Economic Well-Being at National Council on Aging. It's more than likely not to be sufficient. Few younger workers think they will rely primarily on Social Security in retirement. They think about retirement at all. As they approach retirement, however, those expectations change. The 2026 Retirement Trend Report from NFP, a property and casualty broker and benefits consultant, shows a gradual evolution in retirement expectations as workers age. Only 12% of workers under 35 said they expected Social Security to be their main source of income in retirement, NFP reports, but the figure rises to 22% for workers at age 35 to 54 and to 41% for workers 55 and older. Another retirement report, the 2026 Retirement Confidence Survey from the Employee Benefit Research Institute, shows a similar trend. As workers age, Social Security looms even larger in their retirement plans. The EBR report draws from surveys of more than 2,000 workers and retirees in January of 2026. Some American retirees can rely on Social Security for income and get by, retirement experts say, but nearly half? Maybe not. That's way too high, said Craig Copeland, Director of Wealth Benefits Research at EBRI. I'm talking maybe 10% could do it, he said, and those people would not be living a good retirement. With the retirement planning industry, debate rages about how large a role Social Security should play in American employees' retirement plans. Financial planners urge people to save hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions, to support Social Security in retirement. One rule of thumb suggests workers aim to save 10 times their annual income in a retirement account. Financial service firms publish retirement magic numbers derived from surveys that ask Americans how much money they think they would need for a comfortable retirement. One recent report that put the magic number at 1.2 million. American workers read these reports. The idea of $1 million retirement magic number can feed retirement fears. It scares people when they see you need $2 million to retire, said Steve Jans, wealth management practice leader at NFP. In the NF report, 69% of workers said they lack confidence in their ability to achieve a comfortable retirement. More than 70% said their retirement savings were, quote, off track, end quote. The findings, released in July, draw from a survey of 1,000 working adults. For the other side of the retirement planning debate, experts stress there's no need for most people to save a seven-figure sum for retirement. They note that millions of Americans retire with little or no savings, and most of them seem to be doing fine. The typical retiree has only $126,000 in household savings, according to a 2025 retirement survey. Other surveys suggest about only half of retirees have any retirement savings. Nonetheless, surveys show that most retirees are financially stable. In April 2026 Gallup poll, 82% of retirees say they have enough money to live in comfort. 2025 Federal Survey of Household Economics and Decision Making, 83% of Americans over 60 said they're either living comfortably or doing okay. Gallup poll illustrates how heavily retirees rely on Social Security. The pollster asked retirees to name their major sources of income. 62% Social Security, only 27% cited outside retirement savings. When they get out in the rural areas of America, Social Security is a major issue income source for retirees. They seem to make it work for them, Jan said. You shouldn't expect Social Security to be your primary source of income, he said, but the reality is, it is for many people.
You are listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for August 10th on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are David Hayes and
Tom Scanlon.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers remain Tom Scanlon and,
David Hayes.
as always, we turn to the sports section. And our first article is titled Backstage Insightful Vantage Fame Point. Dateline, Canton, Ohio. Minutes after Roger Craig announced that he has been diagnosed with dementia during a 10-minute videotaped acceptance speech, Emmitt Smith zipped past me and shook his head. It's a brutal game, Smith, NFL's all-time leading rusher, said as I stood near a side entrance to the stage where the Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremonies were conducted August 8th inside Tom Benson Stadium. Craig, age 66, won 3 Super Bowls with the San Francisco 49ers and in 1985 became the first player in NFL history to rush for 1,000 yards and notch 1,000 yards receiving in the same season. But the running back acknowledged in his speech, without regret, that doctors suspect concussions suffered during his football career may have contributed to his condition. That's what Smith, the former Dallas Cowboys star, was undoubtedly processing in the moment after Craig's courageous revelation. You learn a lot, Smith continued, teaches you. But damn. After Craig was showered on the stage with love from a contingent of 49er Hall of Famers, former roommate Ronnie Lott, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Charles Haley, Steve Young, and Eddie DeBartolo among them, he jetted backstage and posed for pictures with his newly unveiled bust. He was joined in the moment by more than a dozen family members, including his son, Roderick, who never left his side. Some ways it was the same Roger Craig who brought so much pop to one of the NFL's most productive offenses, full of life, energy, and positivity. He stretched his arms wide, looking to the sky, and yelled, "This is my family." What the hell? Craig waited 28 years for this moment, elected as a senior finalist decades after some of his teammates were enshrined. Kind of knew something was going to happen sooner or later, Craig told USA Today Sports. I was just waiting. Despite the expended time on the Hall of Fame runway, Craig and his family made certain that receiving the highest honor in football was not just about him. Classy. Roderick said it was super important to publicly reveal the diagnosis of his father's brain disorder. Dementia symptoms include a loss of cognitive functions, including memory impairment and reasoning. As awareness, it may help other football players. There are a lot of players that deal with this and they don't say anything. By the time they get older, it's already too late. We were big proponents of getting on offense early and helping make sure you're talking to your doctor. Roderick said he just wants to help as many people as possible. He's the bravest person I know, my hero. I'm so proud of him. Witnessing Craig and the other inductees, Larry Fitzgerald, Adam Vinatieri, Luke Gucci, and Drew Brees, take their final steps into football immortality from a different vantage than usual, added the context to the week of festivities. With the new class, the roster of Hall of Famers, the team you can never get cut from, the great Deacon Jones used to say, has expanded to 387 and never has many returned to Canton to ring in the new class, with 120 coming back to usher in the class of 2026. Respect and camaraderie with the Hall of Famers is palatable. Even with several events leading up to their enshrinement, the Gold Jackets were presented on Friday night at the Civic Center, a few hours after a group photo in the Ray Nitschke luncheon, when existing Hall of Famers passed around the microphone, preaching to the new class, who can't speak during the lunch. There's still a great deal of catching up happening backstage. LaDainian Tomlinson, a first ballot inductee in 2017, flew in Saturday morning. Certainly wanted to support Brees, his San Diego Chargers teammate and fellow member of the team's 2001 draft class. As we chatted backstage, he pledged to make it back more often. It was his third time back. My perspective has changed, he told USA Today. So many guys that I played with and against are going in. Really need to be here. I mean, just hearing the old stories is special. Just sitting around listening to Mean Joe Green. You kidding me? Backstage was a hub of motion between, even during the speeches. Players can lounge in plush recliners situated on stage, but with the heat and various levels of attention span, it's not uncommon for some of the Hall of Famers to hang around backstage for portions or extended portions of speeches. Of course, it's a who's who of football royalty. I got back into a rather deep conversation with Eric Dickerson, whose myth that Bill Belichick was not inducted on the first ballot. And well, the former running back was far from the only Hall of Famer to broach that topic during the week of festivities. In any event, my chat with Dickerson was briefly interrupted by Joe Montana. A couple of minutes later, someone comes from behind, grabs my shoulder. It was Bruce Smith. Yup, football royalty. Somebody mentioned Belichick? Well, Vinatieri certainly did. Vinatieri, the NFL's all-time leading scorer and field goal maker who won 3 Super Bowls with Belichick and the New York Patriots, and another with the Indianapolis Colts, had some distinct stand-up comedy in his speech. In acknowledging that Belichick wasn't in attendance, Vinatieri cracked, "I thought it was because training camp had already started, but in truth it's because he's judging his girlfriend's cheerleading competition." Ouch. Although Vinatieri added, all jokes aside, in my opinion, Bill is the greatest coach of all time. Punchline was enough to get Warren Sapp out of his seat. Sapp, the gregarious former QB killer, bolted backstage, cackling. "He's going to burn every bridge going in," Sapp said. Vinatieri also made reference to the size of Peyton Manning's head. As Manning whisked past me following the speech, it was apparent there were no hard feelings. Manning shrugged his shoulders and deadpan. "Humble kicker." Then Manning headed to a photo area and mingled with Vinatieri's family members, whom he eventually ushered toward the kicker's bust. Class P money. Hey, it's a major fraternity. Chris Berman is surely a member. The ESPN icon was back for his 26th consecutive ceremony, excluding the pandemic-canceled event 2020, as the Master of Ceremonies. Late last year, Len Swan presented Berman with a silver football signed by Hall of Famers to commemorate the 25th year mark. With Jim Porter, the Pro Football Hall of Fame executive director within earshot, Berman declared, "If they'll have me, I'll do it every year, and I still have a voice." In other words, Berman wanted to be back to back to back to back. He's certainly old school. Berman whipped out a folder that contained handwritten scripts for the introductions of each inductee and other portions of the ceremony. I'll never forget Larry Sr. pulling out a newspaper article about his son folded up in his wallet, telling me his son had potential. Junior was probably just starting high school. And lastly, who's next? First-time eligibles for the class of 2027 include Adrian Peterson, Rob Gronkowski, Ben Roethlisberger, Richard Sherman, and Antonio Brown. These are just some of the new candidates joining a well-credentialed cast of returning nominees. And did somebody mention Belichick?
The next article is also from the sports section. The topic is the NHL. The title of the article is "The NHL Offseason Questions the Red Wings Motoring on Several Big Fronts." The article is submitted by Mike Brame. August is often a down period for the NHL transactions, and that mostly has been the case after a very eventful July. Many top free agency signings were done on the 1st of July, Alex Ovechkin re-signed in July 2nd, and Patrick Kane made his decision to come home to the Chicago Blackhawks on July 23rd. The arbitration period ended with all 15 players settling before their hearings. The Philadelphia Flyers signed the Anaheim Ducks' Leo Carlsson to a record $18 million average annual value offer sheet, which the team matched. Blackhawks star Connor Bedard signed for $15 million AAV, and San Jose Sharks' Macklin Celebrini passed Carlson to become the NHL's highest paid player with an $18 million extension. The Pittsburgh Penguins broke the usual August doldrums on 6 August with a surprising 8-year contract for Vile Kuvanen. Does that mean teams might ramp up again? There's more on their plates. Here's some of what needs to be resolved as the start of the 2026-27 season approaches in late September. First, Red Wings GM search. The Detroit Free Press, part of the USA Today network, reported team owner Chris Ilitch has employed a search firm to find a replacement for general manager Steve Yzerman. He will move up to a senior advisor position after 7 years as GM. Assistant GM Sean Horkoff is handling day-to-day responsibilities, though that does not extend to making trades. Next question is Dylan Larkin trade request. The Red Wings star trade request happened after the regular season and leaked in early June. He has a no-trade clause and has listed the Florida Panthers, Vegas Golden Knights, and Minnesota Wild as preferred destinations. The Red Wings have also talked to the Dallas Stars, the Free Press reported. Yzerman said after the draft he would act only in the team's best interest. That decision likely will fall to Yzerman's successor. Larkin has 5 years left on his contract, so Detroit doesn't have to rush to make a move. But things could get complicated for Larkin as team captain if the situation isn't resolved before training camp. The next question regards Quinn Hughes' contract extension. The Wild sent a big haul to the Vancouver Canucks to land the coveted defenseman last winter and is about to enter the final year of his contract. Minnesota would like to extend him. I've been talking to Quinn in his camp all along, General Manager Bill Guerin said last week on the Judd's Hockey Show podcast. These things take time. They're big decisions for players. They're big decisions for teams. It's a process to work through it. And finally, a 3-year extension through 2029-30 would line Quinn up with the end of the contract of his brother, Jack, who's playing for the New Jersey Devils. Quinn Hughes should pass Chicago's Bowen Bryan at $12.5 million as the top-paid defenseman with his contract, and likely Celebrini as the top-paid player. Colorado defenseman Cale Makar, a 2-time Norris Trophy winner, is also up for an extension and could set records.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 13 minutes after the hour. Let's turn to Major League Baseball. Padres won't apologize for trying to win. The author's Bob Nightingale. Dateline Phoenix. Come on, you weren't really fooled, were you? Did you actually believe those rumors the San Diego Padres were going to trade all-star closer Mason Miller? Trade talks with the New York Yankees about Miller and setup man Adrian Morejon? The speculation they would be packaging Miller to dump one of their star players with a bloated contract? Or the wild notion they would just completely give up at the trade deadline and orchestrate a sell-off for prospects? Please. The Padres and A.J. Preller, their president of baseball operations, don't operate that way. They're always in, pushing their chips into the middle of the table, no matter what the cost. Remember when Peter Seidler was alive? He was bidding on everyone from Trey Turner to Aaron Judge, jumping in and offering Judge a 10-year, $400 million contract at the last minute, even though they already had a right fielder in Juan Soto, who they intended to keep. The payroll was slashed when Sadler died, going from $256 million in 23 to $173 million the following season, and is now at $219 million. But it didn't slow down Preller's aggressiveness, who dozes off occasionally at night, just long enough to charge his cell phone. So the Padres, hovering around 500, the trade deadline, went shopping, while other wildcard contenders, facing the same odds, sat idly by. Preller bought 2021 Cy Young winner Robert Ray and All-Star Casey Mize to the San Diego party. Sure, the Padres don't have a shot to catch the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're in a fight for their lives just to knock off the Arizona Diamondbacks or Philadelphia Phillies in the wild card race. Still, no matter the odds, no matter their offensive struggles, no matter their flawed starting rotation, they went all in once again. We're trying to win, said Preller. We don't apologize for it. We're trying to win championships. We're trying to get to the postseason and do it year after year. Certainly they become October regulars. Padres have reached the postseason 4 times in the last 6 years, but have yet to reach the World Series since 1998 and are still searching for their first title in the 57-year history of the franchise. The way they see it, they can survive going with just 2 traditional starters for weeks, Fernando Tatis Jr. going 2 months until hitting his first homer, Manny Machado's batting average not climbing above 200 till July, second baseman Jack Cronenworth out 2 months with a concussion, and center fielder Jackson Merrill hitting .219 with a .628 OPS. The first half of anything is possible. We're definitely in a much better spot than we were, Padres starter Michael King tells USA Today Sports. We went through a stretch where it was just Walker and Buehler, and that I were even throwing bullpens in between starts. No one else could, because just about every day was a bullpen game. Craziest part is that it worked, even with Randy Velasquez last week becoming the only starter besides King to pitch 6 innings in a game since June 3rd. Those guys dominated, King said. There's some games that I was like, this is unfair right now, because teams weren't seeing the same guy twice, and then they see the A game at the back end of games. Jeremiah Estrada comes in throwing 98. Adrian Morjan comes in throwing. Mason Miller comes in throwing 103. I assume they're talking about miles per hour. It was a beautiful thing. Now the Padres can go with the conventional approach, having King, Ray, Mize, Vasquez, and Buehler as their starting 5, with perhaps Joe Musgrove and Nick Pivetta joining them in late August or early September, making them a legitimate threat. Give the Padres a lead after 6 innings and the game is over. The offense is coming around, the rotation is rounding out, and the bullpen is our strength, Preller says. So it's kind of the way we set up at the beginning of the year. Just getting here has been a bit of a challenge, but hopefully we're in a spot now where we have a chance to finish strong. They wouldn't be the Padres if their path to October was smooth. Mize gave up a career high 8 earned runs in his Padre debut. Ray, who yielded a 1.9 ERA his last 8 starts, followed up giving up 4 earned runs, allowing 12 base runners in 5 innings in his debut. So much for making great first impressions. Still, there's no panic, and if you ask the Padre veterans, they're motivated more than ever to reward the front office for their faith. If Preller and the incoming new ownership believe in them enough to add payroll and go for it at their deadline, why not confirm their beliefs? This group has been together for 6 years, Preller said. They've been through a lot of pennant races. They've been through a lot of these trade deadlines. So I think they understand that as an organization, if we're in it, we feel like we have a good team, we're going to try to do what we can to supplement our club. I think they expect that, and I think they appreciate playing for an organization that's trying to win. So go ahead, Tigers, who are still the American League Central race. Surrender and dump two-time Cy Young winner Tarek Skubal and Mize. Let the Washington Nationals, Miami Marlins, St. Louis Cardinals, and Cincinnati Reds bow out of the NL Wild Card race by their actions at the trade deadline. The Padres, no matter how poor their odds are of surviving, 32.1% according to Fangraphs, simply aren't built that way. They have a shot, they're going to take it. We feel good coming into the year, Tate said, but we struggled. We had injuries, we had a lot of things go wrong. Well, they didn't give up on us. Now we are. I'm taking my chances with this team. Says Padres manager Rick Stammen. We had to fight through a lot of times. We went through a tough stretch. We went through a rut offensively that tailed into an 8-game losing streak. We just continued to fight, and since then, we played pretty good baseball. Probably playing our best ball right now. Will it be good enough? We'll see.
The following is also from the sports section. It's an update on Tommy John. It is titled, Tommy John, age 83, delivers his emotional farewell. Former All-Star pitcher Tommy John, whose innovative elbow surgery from more than 50 years ago has helped thousands of pitchers prolong their careers, he sent an emotional message to the New York Yankees Old Timers Day, thanking the organization and the fans while acknowledging his failing health. John, 83, has battled bladder cancer and other ailments in recent years. He reached out and expressed his gratitude to Dr. Frank Jobe, George Steinbrenner, and the Yankee fans. I want to thank the Yankees organization and the Steinbrenner family for giving me this opportunity to say goodbye to everyone, along with all the friends and fans who followed me throughout my 26-year career. He concluded, "The day I left for my first job as a pitcher, my father looked at me and said, 'Good luck, Tommy. Just remember one thing. Whether you make it big in the big leagues or you don't, you'll always just be Tommy John from Terre Haute, Indiana.'" I never forgot those words. Thank you and God bless. John, a 288-game winner over a 26-year career, became synonymous with baseball elbow injuries when he had surgery performed by Jobe in September 1974, removing a tendon from John's wrist, drilling 4 holes in the ulna and humerus bones of his left elbow, grafting the tendons together and holding them in place with anchors. It became one of the most innovative and influential surgeries in the history of sports medicine, performed on more than 3,000 pitchers. It is now referred simply as Tommy John surgery. It's amazing how many careers that surgery has saved, he told the USA Today Sports 2 years ago. It was just an experimental surgery. I would have tried many things to come back and pitch. I told Dr. Jobe, do whatever you can to fix it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, hey, we gave it our best. Thank God it worked. It was such a blessing. The only thing I hate is that 50 years later, it's needed more than ever, and that's sad. You would think with modern training and techniques, pitchers wouldn't need that surgery as much. John went on to pitch for another 14 years while winning 164 more games. He has frequently been asked why the surgery was named after him and not Dr. Jobe himself. I asked Frank about that finally. John said, he was such a humble guy, but he told me that he was tired of saying ulnar collateral ligament replacement surgery with the palmaris longus tendon. it was easier for him to say, "Oh, the surgery I performed on Tommy John?"
Our next article is of men's gymnastics. Fred Richard wins U.S. title to go with the Olympic bronze. The author is Nancy Armour. Dateline Phoenix. Olympic bronze medalist Fred Richard has a new title. Richard handily won his first all-around title August 8th at the U.S. Gymnastics Championship. His two-day combined score of 170.015 was 2 points ahead of Tokyo Olympian Shane Wiskus. Up-and-comer Daniela Lakin was third at 167. Richard was all but assured of winning the title after Lakin, 19, botched his floor routine, the second event. Richard just needed to be clean the rest of the night, which he was, putting up solid scores on every event. After landing his vault in the final event, Richard threw his arms wide and roared, a huge grin on his face. I feel it's one of those things that was on the list of what I haven't done. I need to kind of prove I can win the U.S. Championship, said Richard, a three-time NCAA champion and member of the U.S. team that won bronze medal in the Paris Olympics. It shows that everything I'm doing in the gym is working. Coaches around me, my teammates, everything is lined up. I'm on the right track for the Worlds this year and then 2028. Richards didn't lock his spot on the U.S. team for the World Championships in Rotterdam, Netherlands. He also needed to finish in the top 3 on 3 or more events and only did that on a floor exercise. But it's assured of being on the 5-man team. There's little doubt Richard is one of the country's best gymnasts. The U.S. title has eluded him. He was third in the 2023 and runner-up the last 2 years, with defending champion Asher Hong injured and 3-time U.S. champion Brody Malone taking the year off. Richards was a heavy favorite coming into the meet. Lincoln made things interesting, finishing the night at 0.153 points behind Richard. He didn't waste any time throwing down a challenge to Richard on Saturday, performing a dazzling high bar routine that drew oohs and ahs from the crowd. His score of 14.963 moved him ahead of Richard. But the battle ended on the next event. Lincoln was low on his first tumbling pass on floor exercise, nearly landing on his knees. His feet slipped out from under him on the landing of a second, and he plopped to the floor. His 11.65 dropped him 3 points behind. Still, Lincoln didn't stop fighting. He rebounded with a sharp performance on the pommel horse and closed with the second-best parallel bars routine. It was really cool. After day one, it was pretty cool to see myself in second place, closely behind Fred, he said. It's a little more real. A little more real in the sense that, like, oh, these dreams are kind of slowly becoming a reality. The main difference is now I see, like, oh, it's really possible here. We're in the mix. Back in the mix is Wiskus, who took time off after not making the Paris team. Tokyo Olympian is approaching this go-round with a different mindset, focused on enjoying himself, because he knows he won't always be able to do the sport he loves. Putting in 12 routines together and competing the way that you train, have that moment after the routine to celebrate and have that sigh of relief, those are the feelings that I'm chasing. And those are the feelings I know I'll never get anywhere except for gymnastics, Wicca said. Finally, he said, I'm sure I have great, beautiful moments in my life outside of gymnastics, but I know the feeling that after P-bars, I probably won't feel that after I'm done with all this. So it was really nice to get that feel again.
You are listening to a reading of today's USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour. The next article is from the book section. The title of the book is Welcome to Your Life It is written by Roland Orzabal. The rock singer from the 80s bears his addiction and recovery. The article is submitted by Melissa Ruggieri. Roland Orzabal never wanted to write a memoir. A book about astrology, yes, but digging into the fluctuating tenure of Tears for Fears, the sorrow was watching his wife slip away and revisiting his Ambien addiction. Not really at the top of his list to do. Orzabal, 64, placated his agent, wrote a few introductory chapters, and realized he could integrate his deep knowledge of astrology into the story of his life as the co-founder, guitarist, and co-singer-songwriter of one of the most quietly consequential bands birthed in the 80s. The resulting book, Welcome to Your Life, Love, Death, and Tears for Fears, HarperCollins, bears the tagline, An Astrological Memoir, as testament to Orzabal's understanding of the world. I can't look at life or the chemistry between people or the energies we are made from or the qualities we're made from without using the astrological model, Orzabal, bespeckled with grayed hair neatly pulled back, says on a video call from New England. I could have written a memoir, but it would have been absolutely lacking in depth. Even in suffering, there is understanding. I mean, I wouldn't know how not to live this way. So yeah, I wanted to write a book on astrology because most of the books I read, they're all kind of menu books like, right, yeah, come on. In 2014, Orzabal's debut novel, Sex, Drugs, and Opera, arrived. Its storyline about a middle-aged pop star who tries to rejuvenate his career and marriage by joining a reality show stemmed from real life, though Orzabal turned down the TV offer extended to him in 2010. But Welcome to Your Life, which music fans will instantly recognize as the first line of TFF's breakthrough hit, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, is devoid of rom-com inanity. Instead, it's packed with vivid anecdotes about the fearless, confident Kurt Smith, his childhood friend in Bath, England, whose musical meshing with Orzabal felt like the missing piece of a jigsaw, he writes. The pair formed Tears for Fears as teens after stints in other local bands and eventually sold more than 30 million albums worldwide on the strength of songs both sumptuous and cerebral, such as Shout and Mad World. Orzabal's wry humor surfaces throughout. A running joke about the Beatles and crossing paths with Paul McCartney is particularly amusing, and most stories are spiked with astrological explanations. An early chapter delves into how the movements of Pluto are connected, along with its representation of fate and impact on the astrological planet of birth, death, and rebirth. These elucidations are not only fascinating, but wholly original as far as rock star memoirs go. Roland Orzabal says his wife's death deepened the bond with Kurt Smith. Before he got his place of being happily remarried with a 13-month-old daughter joining his adult sons Rao and Pascal, Orzabal endured plenty of personal anguish. Some of the book, when I was writing it, I was in tears, he says. A lot of the time we kind of push things toward the back, but when you're writing it, you're confronted with some of the ugliness. Grief is a well, and I think in your life you can replace the ugliness with beauty, but that ugliness is not ever really going to go away. Though TFF fans were aware of the slow decline of Orzabal's wife, Carolyn Johnson, who died in 2017 at age 54 of alcohol-related cirrhosis and dementia, the book illuminates not only her struggles, but also the eroding emotional toll on Orzabal. Her loss, however, spurred a deeper bond between Orzabal and Smith as the pair had periods of drifting apart throughout the decades. There was a healing of that relationship between me and Kurt after Caroline's death, no doubt. I think my new wife, Emily, has really helped that because she's a nice person. I would say Caroline was happy to be antagonistic, Orzabal says with a fond smile, but Kurt became the rock, a solid partner, and I've told him to his face and in emails that he's been excellent. Even with the intricate details of Carolyn's deterioration, Orzabal acknowledges he cushioned some of the revelations. Let's put it this way. I could have made it worse. I could have written more ugliness, but she's my son's mother, so I had to be gentle with my language. I don't throw her under the bus because she's no longer here, but because most of her life she was incredible. When it comes to his self-reflections, however, Orzabal is unsparing. His penchant for downing bottles of wine throughout his life seemed reasonable, but an increasing dependence on Ambien and steady increases in dosages led him to the brink of death in 2018. Blackouts and seizures, tremors that became full-body shakes, stabbing chest pains. Orzabal credits the quick reactions of Emily, his girlfriend at the time, for getting him to the hospital and saving his life. Though the outings of Acelus spiral arrives late in the book, Orzabal says it was the 4th chapter he wrote as a test to see if he could produce a memoir. The ugly story, as he calls it in our interview, is the first time he disclosed the severity of his addiction. Most people don't know it. Even my family don't know, he says. I mean, they know something. They know I had seizures, but it was scary stuff. Orzabal says he has recently recorded 9 new music tracks, but there are no plans for a Tears for Fears album anytime soon. Kurt is taking a break from making music, Orzabal said, without elaborating. Though Orzabal has a couple of songs on the go, he's taking a wait-and-see approach right now. And finally, he's pleased, though, that on recent TFF tours, the audience has been a mix of holdovers from the band's 80s and 90s hit-making pinnacle and younger fans. There was a period of darkness in the 80s, and what I think younger people are finding through streaming is access to some songs that have a little bit more meaning, Orzabal says. They're a bit darker, and they can truly express what is going on inside them. Whereas the multi-billion selling pop machine, it doesn't want to provide it.
The next is a streaming review. Bear Grylls ate a deer tongue on new show. The author is Aaron Jensen. No red carpets unfurl as the stars and creator of The Chosen join Bear Grylls for a new adventure series. In The Chosen in the Wild with Bear Grylls, the famous survivalist guides actors Jonathan Roumie, who plays Jesus, Luke Dimian plays Judas, Noah James, who plays Andrew, Paris Patel, who plays Matthew, and Elizabeth Tabish, who plays Mary Magdalene, and showrunner Dallas Jenkins through challenging American landscapes, including Castle Valley and Canyonlands in Utah and the Great Basin Desert. All 6 episodes, each featuring one guest, are now streaming on Prime Video. Season 6 of The Chosen, depicting the crucifixion, will premiere on the platform November 15th. It's been a life dream to get to do one with Jesus, and I guess this is about as close I'll ever get. Grylls tells USA Today of the epic with Roumie. Grylls, who wrote last year's The Greatest Story Ever Told, an account of the life and death and resurrection of Jesus, relies on his faith daily. Helps me make in the small moments and the big moments, he said. Grylls remembered talking to God as he plummeted thousands of feet in a skydiving accident in 1996 when his parachute failed to deploy. He broke 3 vertebrae in the fall. To be honest, there were some expletives coming out as well, Grylls, age 52, jokes, but there are plenty of dark moments in the hospital afterward, praying, and that spirit of needing something beyond myself has never left me, and my faith has never let me down. Romy, for his part, thanks Jesus before landing in the Adirondacks after jumping out of a helicopter at 10,000 feet. Nothing was off limits for the chosen and the wild, Grills said. There wasn't an actor from The Chosen who at the end of the day didn't say, "That was one of the hardest days of my life." And I love that, Grills said. That's what the show is. We never picked the easy route, he says with a chuckle. We're always crossing rivers and climbing up ravines. We make the route dynamic and exciting and challenging, and that's part of it. But then there's time to sit down and cook up a snake or whatever it is around a campfire. Talk about life and talk about their journey and faith. As customary on Grills' show, guests dine on animals found during their escapades, each far less appetizing than loaves of bread or fish. Tabish and Grills split a lifeless tarantula. James found removing a locust head and legs before ingesting it to be a little serial killer-like. Romney crunches down a beetle he initially thought might be fake, but another Grills delicacy proved to get tougher to swallow. While walking in the forest, he and Romy happened upon a ravaged dead deer. Grills cuts off the animal's tongue with a knife and boils it over a campfire. The tongue is like one of the last bits of carcass that's going to rot because it's all protected in the skull, Grills said. Generally, the animals are devoured, all the soft organs and all the blood, all the innards, pretty quickly. But the bone marrow and what's left inside the skull tends to last the longest. So the rest of it was a little stinky, not going to lie, but the tongue was just on the turn. But we cooked it hard and it was a bit chewy, but it was fine. For Grills, the true spirit of the series shines in moments of intimate conversation. The power of Chosen in the Wild is you get to know these actors in a way you never would just sitting on chat show couch, he said. You're not just getting a story, you're actually getting their heart and how playing this role has changed their life. In Tabish's episode, she opens up about being involved in hopelessness before being cast as Mary Magdalene and dealing with neck and back problems stemming from a pair of car accidents about a decade ago. I was numbing my chronic pain with drink a lot. There were days where I just didn't get out of bed, she said. There's a depression that comes with you if you don't take care of it. Demian shares his acting ambitions, made his father nervous. He was like, no, stay safe, get a desk job. Find a nice, tiny, depressing cubicle and stay there. Get paid. And Demian recalls in the episode, safety's an illusion, Grills said during the interview. The path less trodden leads to all the good places in life. You want to achieve anything, you have to step out in faith, just the way life works. And finally, and even for those that think, I'm going to play it safe and stay put, it's actually not safe. You decay. Humans are designed for challenge and to move forward.
You are listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 43 minutes after the hour. The next article is a streaming article about Greta Lee. The title of the article is Greta Lee, age 43, reflects on her late fame in Hollywood. The article is submitted by Patrick Ryan. It's not every weekend you get your own double feature. That's why Greta Lee's parents are planning to host a watch party to celebrate her two new summer movies. Twisty creature feature The Last House, streaming now on Netflix, and a wry art dramedy titled Late Fame in select theaters. It should make for an interesting night for them, quips Lee, 43, who's still puzzling over what exactly to dub her twin bill. Jokes aside, It's a meaningful milestone for the Korean-American actress who was a TV mainstay for more than 15 years before her Golden Globe-nominated breakthrough in the 2023's Past Lives. Since then, the Russian doll star has top-line films including Tron, Ares, and House of Dynamite, and lent her voice to the misunderstood tablet LilyPad in Toy Story 5. I'm so amazed I get to do this, Lee says. As the title Late Fame suggests, I've experienced my own type of late fame, so getting to work in movies is something I don't take for granted. The Last House is an M. Night Shyamalan-style thriller about parents Ann Lee and Jason, who on a seemingly ordinary day are trapped inside their home with their 2 kids and no way of getting out. Days tick by with their doors and windows shut fast, and they quickly discover all their neighbors are sealed in their houses as well. I get angry and low blood sugar in, I don't know, an hour? Lee says with a laugh. We talked to actual survivalists who were teaching us all the methodology behind surviving, and it's unreal. I was like, I'm ill-equipped. I'm an actor. I should stay in that zone. The family does the best they can to investigate the otherworldly forces keeping them inside, but they also take time out for movie nights, impromptu haircuts, and exercise, the latter of which would not be on Lee's agenda. Working out and expending all those valuable calories, she says with a playful disgust. I'd like to think I'd be doing all sorts of crafts. How cool would it be if I got really into ceramics or something? But that's what's cool about the film. It forces you to think about your own habits and what you would become in that situation. The movie couldn't be more different from Late Fame, which follows a fictional, long-forgotten poet named Ed Saxberger, who learns his work has been reevaluated and embraced by a group of young bohemians. One of his fans is the enigmatic Gloria, a hard-boozing actress and cabaret singer who longs for the glamorous old days of New York parties and culture. Before filming in Manhattan, I got a walking tour of Soho from Wilhelm, who was pointing at every building and talking about where he used to live, whatever argument he was in over there, and who was dating who here. Lee says, my heart aches hearing things like that because so much is lost. I'm glad we got to do a movie that touches on what happens to all the ghosts of our time. Lee is a Broadway veteran who lists Miss Saigon and A Doll's House among her wish list productions. She's modeled Gloria off theater giants, and including Liza Minnelli, Heather Headley, and Marlene Dietrich. Gloria is an homage to what I consider to be a capital D diva, Lee says. Women who arguably I don't know if we make them like that anymore. Late Fame director Kent Jones was initially floored by the quiet and simplicity Lee brought to Past Lives, only to discover her quick wit and rich singing voice as he got to know her. She understood Gloria inside and out, Jones says. She did something enormously difficult. She was playing a character who was playing a character, and she did it so beautifully that every nuance was exciting. I mean, actors like Greta come along so rarely. An avid home gardener who lives in Los Angeles, Lee has been missing her eggplants as she traveled the world promoting her projects this summer, including Disney Pixar's billion-dollar hit Toy Story 5. After voicing the movie's ostensible villain LilyPad, it's been surreal for Lee to encounter her character's visage out in the real world. Lily is having her best life all across the globe, Lee says. I've seen her at the airport, on billboards, on buses. It's wild, but I'm so proud. Lee shares 2 sons, Apollo 9 and Raphael 6, with comedy writer husband Russ Armstrong. Both kids have Toy Story merch, although they're not ones to play with LilyPad's toys. They're very attuned to the fact that, oh, that's Mom. We've got the real thing at home, so we don't need the other thing. Although having their mom portray a literal iPad has made them more conscientious about screen time. All I have to do is just turn on the movie like, are you sure about that, kiddo? Let's remember the message of the movie. As Gloria remarks in Late Fame, nothing will prepare you for getting famous. But as Lee looks around at her life right now, she feels as though she has arrived just on time. And finally, the people who have always been with you are the people who matter. I don't think that's something I really knew until recently. I felt like I had a very full life and I was fully formed in some way before my career changed. That lack of anonymity can be jarring if it happens suddenly, but I am lucky that I have all these people around me who can keep me grounded and put me in my place if I start acting crazy.
And next is a television review. Spiridakos utilizes her Chicago PD skills. The author is Brian Alexander. Starring as the titular Glacier National Park Ranger in USA Network's Anna Pigeon, actress Tracy Spiridakos required no additional training for a takedown and handcuffing scene set in the breathtaking Montana wilderness. Spiridakos, age 38, tapped into skills and a TV cuffing technique ingrained over 7 seasons as Detective Haley Upton on NBC's Chicago PD. It's actually funny. I feel like most of us on PD, at least what I always did, just hold the cuffs to the person's hands and be like, hold on to these, Sparrow tells USA Today. The time-honored trick which prevents injury came in handy with Anna Pigeon's arrest in Episode 1 on Fridays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time and streaming on Crave. I did a very similar thing when we shot in the park, Sparrow said. I was like, I don't want to hurt your wrist, so I'll just fumble these around your hands, and then you just hold them. Even if Anna Pigeon carries a gun with cuffs, as a real-life law enforcement rangers do, there's much more to the job and character than chasing down criminals. Playing the title heroine from Nevada Barr's best-selling Anna Pigeon mystery novels, Spiridakos infuses a Nancy Drew-style ranger to former city slicker Pigeon, who's dropped into the Northern Exposure-esque National Park office. Executive producer and directed by Back to the Future star Lee Thompson, the outdoor series is the kind of fresh start project that Spiridakos was seeking after the fan favorite left the gritty streets of Chicago PD 2024. Anna is a complicated character dealing with a mysterious trauma that has compelled a career change to become a ranger. She's dealing with grief, and yet there's humor on the show. Has a far lighter tone, Spiridakos said. We found out more about this trauma, and it's still a procedural where we solve a mystery every week. Shot entirely on location in the Canadian Rockies outside Calgary, Alberta. Work each day was an outdoor adventure. The TV Ranger cabinets, built especially for filming, were placed next to a creek with a beautiful vista. We would joke that if we could just install some plumbing into the park cabins, we'd all want to stay there, said Spiridakos, who reluctantly commuted back to a Calgary hotel with plumbing. It was insanely beautiful out there. Along with working with quirky characters like young Ranger protege Zoe Bearchild, played by Paulina Alexis, Anna spends her range time improving the national park in small ways, but he's admonishing a careless park litterer. That was our first day, first scene, Spiridakos said. So much about Anna. It shows her sassiness. The park ranger devotes energy into the park's bald eagle nest live stream webcam that becomes an online viewing favorite. When the camera is vandalized, Anna climbs the towering tree to fix it, bringing her face to face with a nesting eagle. Spiridakos did the climbing and the real-life viewing of the trained eagle in separate takes. I had done some climbing before, but never rappelling up a tree like that, pulling yourself up, because it was an incredible experience. The eagle was massive and beautiful. It's hard to believe how responsive it was to the handler. A different wildlife scene in which Anna helps free a caged cougar required a cougar scene partner. It's a surreal experience being so close to such an incredible animal, said Spiridakos, who was never in the same frame as the big cat. Cougar had its moment, and then we shot me in my moment. We're never in each other's spaces. But Anna does have her way with wildlife. The actress has a way with animals, too. After the heartbreaking death of her 12-year companion, a Rottweiler named Nala, Spiridakos and her partner, former Chicago PD star Jessie Lee Soffer, rescued a new Rottweiler named Kali. She's just amazing, the best part of my day, Spiridakos says. I adore her, and Jessie loves her too. But Soffer and Spiridakos returned to the One Chicago Universe for March's 3-hour crossover event with FBI Special Agent Haley Upton throwing the cuffs on a key suspect in the central attack. Chicago Homecoming was gratifying. I was on the set for a couple months. I loved that character, and I loved that group of people, Spiridakos said. It's like putting on an old hat and hanging out with old friends. But she's not looking for a permanent return, instead manifesting a Season 2 renewal for Anna Pigeon. Season 1 covers only the first 2 books of 19. We do have our Anna Pigeon going on, so let's put that out there and get a second season. But I'd love to go play with the PD people again sometime and be down for that for sure. The 10-episode episode Anna Pigeon airs Friday nights on USA Network. On the USA Network starting August 7th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, while streaming on Crave through October 9th. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for the 10th day of August. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been Tom Scanlon and
David Hayes.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.